Dear viewer, as you can see, both Kim and I have been reduced to these abstract forms today. Kim is doing it in solidarity, as I am in a different location, trapped in a house in which I am dog sitting with, I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Have you heard of this, Kim? It's called novel coronavirus. Are you aware of this phenomenon?
That writer's block?
I think it is. It's got something to do with, I think it's something to do with swine flu. Remember swine flu? Yeah.
Or
Anyway.
wine flu?
Wine flu. They say you can't go outside when you get this particular disease, which I think is nonsense. I don't. Yeah, you have permission to leave that in because it's in character. I'm not going to sound as good because I'm away from a microphone, and I'm unwell, which is just very, very quaint. And Kim, being unwell has given me some deeply existential and esoteric thoughts. Have you heard of Bo Burnham? Of course.
Only through you, actually.
Yeah.
I think I've seen the name around, but not very familiar, no.
So he's definitely come up before. He is a comedian, actor, director. He's one of those guys. He's just one of those wonder boys who does everything. And he's also one of the larger comedians of prominence who emerged from YouTube, if I'm not mistaken. Did like funny music. It was his whole thing. While promoting one of my favorite movies ever, 8th Grade, he said something during an interview about why young people, especially Gen Z, create things and why they broadcast themselves, and how the way that he sees it and also the way that I see it, we've lived in a media landscape engineered in such a way that people must broadcast themselves to the world and be seen, otherwise they don't exist, or what they do is not worthwhile. Very interesting. A lot of people my age have that desire to be listened to and seen. And the idea that it's been engineered by the hypersaturation of easily created and distributed media, of mostly just singular people running entirely off of charisma, content for visibility's sake. It's very, very interesting to me. And it's gotten me thinking about why we make and also why you make.
I'd like to flip our usual script here a little bit.
Yeah.
Rather than necessarily hand it over to me. What do you think?
Well,
first of all, do you agree or disagree with Bo Burnham?
Excellent. So generally, I've found that this is something that I emphatically agree with, because I can see it in not only myself, but also like most of my peers. If you speak to anyone that I know or anyone around our age group, at least maybe 50 to 60% of people in my age group have done some kind of terrible short clips on YouTube, like with the intention of going viral when we were pre-teens or like teenagers, whether it be the classic epic let's plays of Minecraft, or epic pranks shot on like a old Nokia camera, or just little clips, something to that end. A lot of people my age have left a strange legacy of surreal, created by children content that they've used as a way of not necessarily expressing themselves, but as an experiment in being seen, because we've been raised on this extremely like and dislike focused, view focused media by people who make it look very easy. And I think that there's definitely a if I am not seen, I don't exist thing that is kind of present in a lot of people my age. It's something that I agree with a lot. And it's something that I try to avoid, which is why I try to put like work into things. I think it's why being a cinematographer is very important, because it's an inherently challenging role that requires work for the thing that will eventually be seen. Same goes for writing. Those are my thoughts. Oof. I've been talking for 2 straight minutes. That's a first. I don't know if you can do this legally, actually, Kim. Workers' rights. I'm actually unwell. So under OHS, you have to say something now.
So is this the Actors Guild strike, or is it the Writers Guild strike? Is
It's
it
both.
the Content Creators Guild strike?
It's both. You're being SAG-AFTRA and wagged. You're being sagged.
SAG-AFTRA'd.
You're being sagged. You're being AFTRA'd, and you're being wagged. See, my voice is deteriorating. I would feel free to leave that in. It's very funny. I am now genuinely curious as to what you think of this phenomenon, but I would also like to ask you what kind of media landscape you grew up in. Are you Gen X or a millennial?
Gen X.
Gen X.
Definitely. I think this has been on the horizon for quite a while, but I do want to circle back a little bit. And isn't it ironic that, if I understand you, that Bo Burnham is using the platform that he seems to be deriding to deride the platform that he's using to deride what he's creating.
And it's one of those things where, like, there's a big joke going around about people who criticize capitalism, not at their expense. It's a joke that people who criticize capitalism use.
Money.
Yeah, it's the
They
money
want,
joke, and it's like the
and they want more of it.
whenever someone makes a point similar to that, someone makes a specific quote. It's the you dislike a system and yet you participated in like sorry, I'm too sick to talk right now. It's the hmm you participate in a system and even though you don't like it.
That seems to be where, what's it called now? X Twitter is that?
Mm. I mean, that's the thing. I think there's a huge difference there because this is not obviously what we're going to talk about for a while, but people can just log off of X. Like they can just do that. They can just stop complaining about X and just get off the thing. Whereas it's incredibly hard, especially for young people, to log off of the entire internet landscape, and especially young people who want to create. And that's the thing. That's when we get into the idea of is art if it's not seen?
That's a question that's really been there since the birth of art.
You and I should get to it later after we've chatted about the environment in which you grew up.
What's the purpose of art? Is it the creation or is it the consumption, for lack of a better word?
I've always been on the consumption end, personally. I think that it finds more purpose in, like, and that's the thing. I think that art is art when it's seen. I really do.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
Because the way that I define it personally is it's like a form of it's abstract communication.
It's kind of in the word. Where does that word art come from? What's the root word? What's the etymology?
I'm going to be so honest with you. I don't know.
Artifice.
Ah.
We are creating something to represent something that isn't
Mm.
their thing, something that stands in for something else. A statue represents without being a person. I think in that sense, there does need to be an audience. I don't think we have art without it.
Hence this like artificial need to be seen. Artificial. This artificially induced need to be seen may not necessarily be a bad thing, but it's definitely a lot more intense than it used to be.
The question, we're probably skipping around here a little bit. The question of, is this a negative trend? Is it a bad trend? Is it to the detriment of art? I think a lot of that comes back to the sequence of events, if that makes sense, in as much as traditionally, I think, as a society, have had a view of art as you make the art and then it gets seen. Whereas it does seem to me that the act of being seen comes before making the art, almost, in terms of order, of priority, of how we go about making the art.
Which is absolutely 100% damaging the art or the output or whatever the hell is even there. That would easily be one of our most entertaining bloopers, maybe ever. Anyway, I'll restart the anecdote. Kim, in the editing room, use it from here. About the visibility, I'm going to keep it deliberately vague because this is currently occurring and involves real people, I assume. There's an online filmmaking community that I'm a part of, one of many. And one of the people contributing to it is doing so by dumping a whole lot of AI generated posts. You can tell that he's typed in, write me a short post about the importance of finding the right producer. And he doesn't deny it. He says that he uses AI to do this. A lot of the comments defending him for what, in my opinion, is a deeply scummy thing to do are saying things like, you're just dominating the space with a new technology. And it's so strange hearing people say that, especially in the context of a filmmaking community, because for what that person is choosing visibility first and substance later. They are not giving their thoughts, they're working hardest at being seen, a symptom of the issue we're talking about. We've taught people that being seen comes first, as you just said, before you actually contribute anything.
That idea is not new. I think there is a certain recency bias there.
Oh.
How different is that to Marshall McLuhan?
I will need you to tell me who that is.
Marshall McLuhan was a media theorist, I suppose you could call him. And I am probably going to be quoting completely wrongly at the moment, but I believe that his first writings on it started popping up in the late 1960s, where he was talking about the mass media of the time creating this global village.
Oh.
Does that sound familiar?
It does.
And eventually, the way to be heard in this global village was being in the medium. And so the medium becoming the message. Try and Google that, Marshall McLuhan. Medium is the message.
I've heard medium is the message before.
Yeah. If we just do a little bit of word substitution, how different is that?
Give me a second to.
We are talking ideas from like 50 years ago.
Yeah. Hmm.
How do we not necessarily kind of kill it completely? I think a lot of the kind of knee-jerk reaction is to go, well, let's just not do social media then. But I don't think that's realistic
Hmm.
as independent market makers, as starting creators. Like, how do we even get an audience? How do we even get our work seen? I
Hmm.
think it's almost impossible without social media.
Yeah.
Unless you've got some kind of like long-term 4D chess plan of like doing a, who was it?
Banksy?
Like the kind of artists who don't get any recognition until after they're dead and all their
Oh, Van Gogh.
unreleased, yeah, unreleased works are found. So
Hmm.
unless you've got that kind of strategy, avoiding social media isn't a strategy. It's more about like how do we actually approach it in a healthier way? Because do you feel that there is certain anxiety and FOMO in that
Oh,
visibility aspect of social media?
yeah, that's what it's designed for. It's part of the whole issue. Is it is designed to make you feel bad about not being seen. Because these companies benefit off of you creating content that draws people to their platform so people can look at ads. That
Hmm.
is the meat and potatoes of it. They want you to want to make stuff, and they've programmed a lot of people my age to want to make stuff for that reason.
A lot of it is about flipping the script and communicating, connecting, and having that be seen rather than and consumed, I guess is the question.
Hmm.
Concentrating more on the content and the connection before we think about the delivery and the visibility. So the visibility should come from the content, from the
Hmm.
connection, from the communication, rather than fitting the content and communication in order to create the visibility.
Yeah. And I do like to think that I and other people around me apply that mindset where we prioritize. I try to put how will I show this off right at the bottom of whatever I'm doing if I can. And instead just how do I make it good and meaningful and nice and a good piece of art, you know? Hence learning instead of just making stuff. Also making stuff is a very good way of learning. Now, I would like to quickly, I know I've mentioned it a couple times, we've gone into a very interesting stuff. I'm willing to admit that a lot of the reason I want to make stuff is because of this kind of artificial existential FOMO effect that has plagued a lot of people my age. I also have the confidence to say that I have other reasons to want to make stuff. How do you think the media landscape at wait, hang on. Is it a good or a bad time to have to admit that I have absolutely no sense of what your age is? When when were you born?
1974.
74. Huh. How did the means? What the fuck? I'm so sorry. I can't talk right now. Given that the media landscape of the 21st century has had such a massive effect on the way that people my age think, or at least my peers think, do you think that your media landscape or environment had that much of an effect on your reason to create in the 70s and I presume most of the 80s? And if it did, what was that effect?
I'm not sure how to contextualize that.
Oh,
I
okay.
think in some ways, I think it was for a long while much more of a consumer culture.
Was the 80s?
Yeah, and the actual individual personal expression was something that was much more private and social,
Oh, okay.
as in you might make in a more hobby sense. Very few people had any kind of ambition or idea of getting their own creations seen outside of a local friend group or a local hobby group,
Oh,
where you might have seen that archetypal creator's dream was probably music, if anyone had any inklings whatsoever. I've been jokingly saying for quite a while that filmmaking became the new garage band, as in the 1980s. everyone would have a bass guitar or a drum kit in the garage.
Mm.
But through the late 90s and the early noughts, everyone had a DSLR and a Mac in the bedroom.
Nice.
The kind of barrier of entry for creation was so much higher.
Yes, it is. It's way more democratized today,
Yeah.
which means that way more of it sucks.
Well, there is that. I don't necessarily think the beginner efforts were necessarily that much better. It's just that they never got seen, or
Yeah.
they never got heard,
Yeah,
or they never got published.
that's true. I think that we're getting a lot more. I'm probably an example of this. We're getting a lot more people who are showing off their clunky beginner efforts, like they're being seen now. It is so hard to find the first film of most major filmmakers now because they'll grow up before it was all being distributed. And I know that in like 30 years, it'll be so easy to find because it'll be on YouTube.
And I guess that also kind of comes back to a phenomenon of like, as creators, I think we now are probably more growing up in, or the new generation are probably more growing up in public as artists, so to speak.
What do you mean?
As in the growth of going from a complete novice to some kind of accomplished artist is now visible and on display.
Mm, mm.
As in, you're growing up in public.
It's weird. I think we've noticed that people quite like watching that. Like it's a phenomenon that happens so often with, especially like on. Ooh, excuse me for a second.
Was that growing up in public or throwing up in public? Audience, listeners, let me know what you think.
Let us know in the polls, audience. Um, God, it's so embarrassing that I have COVID-19. What an embarrassment! I thought I was better than this. I thought this local man claims to be better than what, like 80% of the population. Anyway, I forgot what I was saying. I was too busy being funny. Shit. Yes, it's very, very satisfying, and also you see a lot of people making comments about it. Let's say with animators on YouTube who are normally distributing their first or like earliest stuff as they make it, watching the obvious improvement as they do it. Or, oh, you know what? Perfect example for you. I have the perfect example for this entire conversation. Raka Raka. Are you aware of Raka Raka?
Nope.
Danny and Michael Philippou, two brothers, Aussie filmmakers. They've recently released their first feature film, distributed by A24, called Talk to Me, which looks awesome, by the way. Everyone go watch Talk to Me in cinemas right now. It's an Aussie production, very low budget. Raka Raka started off on YouTube making wrestling videos when they were like 7. If you go all the way back to their account, the start of their account, it's just two kids punching each other, like two brothers, and like recording it, and the title's like Epic Wrestle Moment, 3 exclamation marks. And then they started making like effects videos. They got into the effects. They started making. Hang on, just a moment. We're hitting that hour. Anyway, in like the early 2010s, they've started making pop culture effects action videos on like a moderate budget. Things like Harry Potter versus Star Wars, where they're running around with those props and adding the effects later. Then they made stuff on actual sets with real stunts, like the iconic video Halo versus Call of Duty. Everyone go watch that immediately. And notoriously, the scale of their productions as they kept making them just kept going up, up, and up. And they just kept making stuff. All the money that they made from monetization went back into the videos, and you can tell. And now they're here making feature film distributed in cinemas by A24. They're probably the big example of the filmmakers where we will be able to go back and see their first video. And they made some crappy stuff because they were children, but now they're making feature films. And their entire journey is just they've grown up publicly. You can tell physically as well. Like they started off as kids. We've hit that point. We now have filmmakers who have had that journey.
Another interesting one that I've found is musicians and starting to see that. I mean, like we've had that development journey for much longer in music than we have had in film, i.e., we've spoken about this a lot. How musicians pick up their instrument a lot earlier in life than filmmakers pick up a camera for any kind of serious creation. I find really fascinating the extreme example being like the 30 days of XYZ instrument, as in going from 0 to 30 days, and like how far, like how do you develop?
That reminds me, we've seen a lot of that kind of growing up publicly situation much earlier with musicians. That's how Justin Bieber came to be. That was what?
I'll take your word for it.
I mean, that was 20 years ago. That wasn't like a recent event.
Still though, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. That's weird. I just have the very strange thought that what we're talking about is dated.
What do you mean?
The internet moves too fast. Eventually, this conversation will be like parochial, antiquated.
In what sense? I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just not following your question.
No, I wonder if 20 years ago, when Justin Bieber became a pop star after a YouTube video of him on the guitar went viral, people were having this exact conversation.
Maybe.
Perhaps. Audience, those are the epic and deep thoughts you can only get when Ethan is high on cough medication.
How do we change things? How do we make them healthier rather than looking at what has been done,
Hmm.
what is happening?
I think there's a very, very good kind of mindset you can take against that urge to just put stuff out. Like you and I have spoken about the idea of earning visibility or legitimacy, and I think you and I both have problems with it. But in terms of mindset to combat just content for visibility's sake, everyone should try and adopt a mindset where they can justify the content and its existence and the work done to bring it into existence. If you had to word your ideal healthier, actually, yeah, no, give me your version of a
No, 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 no.
no.
You go.
I
You go.
God damn it, back myself into a corner. I don't know how else to word it. I just think that people should, given how easy it is to put stuff out there and how easy it is to put crap out there, think more about the thing you are creating and less about the distribution. Don't think I should make a web series. Think, I should make a web series. I should make one of those things. But instead, like, oh, here's this idea for a story. How should this be translated? Perhaps as a web series. How should I make it? And also with the work. People should take a lot of pride in the work it takes to make something, even if it turns out not being very good, because trust me, it won't. I've made a lot of not very good things with a lot of work applied to them. It's a real habit of mine. People should take more pride in the work done to create something before they put it out there.
When you look at the concepts, then yeah, absolutely, they make sense. But how actionable are they?
Well, I've said my piece. Kim, what do you think would make the content creation landscape healthier, less vain?
I think it's a desire to connect,
Hmm.
a desire to engage. And I think perversely, as I understand it, that is probably going to help the algorithm more as well.
But you're proposing like a desire to connect and engage instead of a desire to be seen.
Yeah,
Nice. It's a bit more altruistic,
either that or a bit more curious, a bit
humanistic.
more conversational as opposed to bombastic and statement like.
Hmm.
I mean, if you think about it, across any genre of storytelling, what are your favorite stories?
Well, I recently added all of my books to this wonderful app. It tells me what my favorite stories are. So now I can tell you, thanks to the algorithm, that I really like adventurous, dark stories, which is also already true. Don't worry about that. I've broken
Well,
down
let's try to delve a little deeper.
reflective
What?
stories, introspective, challenging.
Let's stick with that for a moment.
Cool.
Can you give some examples of challenging stories or challenging material?
It could be either content or bear with me. It could be either in terms of content or accessibility. I'm going to have to go with this as an example. A story that is both inaccessible and full of horrible content is Blood Meridian. So it's challenging in that Cormac McCarthy's prose is the way it is, and it's challenging in that it is extremely violent and sadistic and not an easy read emotionally. But you feel kind of like it's like a good meal with vegetables, vegetables that you might not like the taste of, but they're good for your brain.
Does that engage you as a reader? Does that elicit a reaction?
Yes, a bad reaction in my case, but yes,
Does it make you question?
yes,
Does it
yeah,
make you question full stop?
yeah.
And I think that's kind of where I feel a lot of the content is falling down.
Mm.
And that connection, I guess, if we can find concepts for content that connects us with the viewer, the consumer, beyond the end of the piece of media, I
Mm.
think that's when we're heading in the right direction.
Mm.
Yeah, so trying to find concepts and content that makes us maybe stop a little. Why do we do this? I recognize myself in that moment, it made me look at that moment and look at myself in a way I hadn't done before, or it is all those little things that everyone experiences and feels, but we never talk about because it's just assumed that no one else feels or reacts the same way.
It's like if hypothetically you started a podcast in this hypothetical situation that asks such questions as
Very meta.
why do we pick up cameras and point them at things, and who are these people and why are they talking?
To give some examples, like some of my favorite films, my favorite stories are the
Oh,
ones that are asking. For example, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
ah,
You familiar with that one?
yeah.
Did that leave you with any questions?
I can't say that I've seen it, unfortunately. Yeah, but I am 100% aware of it.
Do you know the premise?
Yes, I'm also aware of the way it looks and the vibe of the thing.
Let's stick with the premise.
Sure.
Premise is a couple who's broken up, they're incompatible or whatever, for whatever reason, they decide to move on. And there is a underground scientific device that can erase specific memories. So the main character has the choice to erase the memory of the person of the relationship. And if we stop there, first of all, does that pique your interest?
Yeah, like that's one of those premises where there's already a lot to chew on.
Yeah. And if we stopped there and we didn't watch the movie, didn't read any of the reviews, would it be a conversation opener at the pub?
Yes.
As in, can you imagine how would you start a conversation with that?
Well, in this obviously very common scenario where I'm with my mates at the pub, I would say, I found out about this crazy Jim Carrey movie where he can do such and such after such and such. Would you guys do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Would you choose to erase a memory?
Mm.
If so, who? What relationship? And obviously, there's like Faustian bargains, and there are unknown parts of like how the brain works, and etc., 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 etc. But along the same lines. So I guess that's kind of a way of thinking of it. Like in that terms of engagement, if we could think of making content that sparks that conversation beyond the medium, beyond the piece of content. Another example, a movie called Afterlife, Japanese movie, curate. The premise there is the first station, if you want to call it that, of the afterlife. When people pass away, they come to this one place where they have to choose one memory from their life, and that's all they get to keep with them for the next stage in the journey in the afterlife.
Jesus.
Now, if we just stop there again, can you see that being a conversation?
Indeed.
As in the obvious conversation starting point, and is like, what memory would you choose? Now, I don't think every piece of content, every piece of creation will have that ability.
But it should try.
We should try more often than we do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously certain content that things like reviews, equipment reviews, techniques, all that things. That's more like creating for other creators. And I think this is where I started kind of losing connection with mainstream movies. Was I just felt like there wasn't that underlying desire for that engagement beyond the movie. It felt like it was being made by filmmakers for other filmmakers, that it was being made by creatives for other creatives. I don't really see what was the conversation in the pub after with someone who isn't a creator.
I can see that. That was part 4 in the underlying subplot of Kim's disillusionment with mainstream movies that exists woven throughout all the episodes in this.
You tell me, like the big movies, the big IPs out there.
Oh, the big IPs.
What are the underlying questions?
There's a few. I mean, I'm really embarrassed, but the only one that I can think of the biggest IP at the moment. If you think about it, the biggest IP, probably Marvel. Marvel are just they're just they tell their little stories. Surprisingly, I can actually think of a decent existential question from them, which is the whole Thanos dilemma, which is the idea of like, if you were given the chance, would you wipe out one half of the entire universe's population if you knew that we were going to go extinct otherwise? That's whatever. That movie runs on the myth that overpopulation is the reason resources are low anyway. But anyway, I haven't seen huge moral dilemmas or question scenarios in something for quite a long time. I think maybe the Matrix Resurrections, the new Matrix movie, offered the idea of would you return to the Matrix if you could?
Yeah.
That was interesting. Let me think. Big IPs. Come on, Ethan. Think. what's huge?
Can you see where I'm coming from?
Yes, but also I think I know that you're only really using the pub talk thing as like a specific example of the effect that movies can have, but I
Hmm.
do think there's a lot more to it than a question or dilemma that you can chat with someone like after the at the pub. Like there are still a lot of movies that are full of emotional experiences that don't dangle on would you or would you not.
Sure, again, it's about like that engagement. And when I talk about engagement, I'm talking beyond. Are you Team DC or are you Team Marvel?
Oh yeah.
Because that's kind of back to the boyhood kind of trading cards. Are you Team McLaren or are you Team Ferrari?
Hmm. Hmm. What are the big modern movies? What are they? Oppenheimer? Would you build the atomic bomb? Probably. Um, that was a joke. I would not.
I guess that's kind of also going back a little bit more. Like I haven't seen it. It's the whole question of Pandora's box. As in, once it's open, you can't put it back in the box.
Oh yeah, that's so what Oppenheimer is about.
Yeah, I think things like some of what for me kind of got lost in the various trilogies of Star Wars. I think that there's a really clear kind of World War II / Cold War analogy, good versus evil in the episodes 4, 5, 6.
George Lucas actually said it was a Vietnam War analogy, which was very interesting.
Yeah, I can see that, but I'm not sure how much that developed. A in the prequels and B in the sequels.
That's when you get into purpose. Like, how much did that analogy serve the story of Star Wars?
Yeah, right.
Even though the prequels aren't awesome, I think they are unified by like a purpose and a human question, which was I think mostly just I think mostly George Lucas asking about what you would do for love. It isn't communicated wonderfully, but it's there.
I think that is one aspect as well, and I think the other aspect that might be haven't been like completely drowned out in other aspects is the birth of a monster,
Hmm.
as in the creation, the Genesis mythology of Darth Vader.
There really aren't many other kids' movies about how fascism comes to be.
Yeah, and I think
Sorry.
think in some ways we kind of need that, not just for kids, but for teenagers and young adults as well,
Oh yeah. Um,
particularly now.
you could try to talk about that kind of visibility, purposelessness thing. You were probably tuned out by the time. No, actually, you watched The Last Jedi when it came out, didn't you?
Yeah, out of obligation.
Okay, I won't be hearing any Last Jedi slander here. It is the exception to what I'm about to say. It's pretty well known knowledge now that there was no plan before they made most recent Star Wars trilogy. There wasn't a story through line planned. They were just
Mm.
going to go as they went, and it's quite noticeable. And there's your issue. They were not unified by a singular question or theme about what it is to be a
Or
human being.
quest, yeah. Yeah.
I will say that The Last Jedi is, as a singular piece, pretty well unified with questions about what makes a good person and what makes a hero, and how many mistakes a person can make and remain a good person and a hero, which I think is very important. And I will not hear any opposing opinions to that fact. But as a work of three films, they do not have any unifying themes at all. And that's where you get
I
into
mean,
the larger scale issue of movies for the sake of a movie being on.
you can't see me right now, but yeah, I'm like doing the zip my lips.
Good, as you should.
I'm not saying that every piece of content needs to have this
Hmm.
underlying deeper philosophical question, but something that makes us engage. Like reaching someone else, in my opinion, I think we need to start there
Yeah.
rather than relying on the medium and the algorithm to create the engagement for us.
And just to clarify, not reaching someone else in the marketing term of how do I make people see this, more
Hmm.
the finding a person who you know will be emotionally and like intellectually engaged by an idea or a question and making that thing for them.
Some of the most engaging classes I've ever done are on philosophy, ones where students have hung back for hours and we've migrated to the pub and kept discussing
Hmm.
on things like social constructivism and conditioning. And did we talk about Foucault's panopticon,
Uh,
those kind of topics?
tell me again.
The panopticon was a prison designed by a British architect
Oh,
Jeremy Bentham,
a
I
big
believe.
lighthouse.
Yeah, French philosopher Foucault, I think in the 1960s or 1970s, used it as an analogy for a thought experiment on how we develop morals and ethics.
Oh,
Panopticon was this prison design that was circular. So every cell was centered around like a circular courtyard, had a tower in the middle, and the guards from the top could see every cell. Occasionally, they would walk around the railing of the tower so that the prisoners could see them. Prisoners got conditioned to thinking that they could be seen at any given moment and eventually started internalizing the jailers, so to speak, as
oh,
in they would start guarding themselves against forbidden behavior
oh,
to the point that because they had been conditioned to believe and feel that they could always be seen, they were self policing.
Jesus.
I think religion is really good at that, particularly Catholicism,
Hmm.
developing that inner priest or authority figure who can always see you when you do something like that. But my point being that those kind of questions probably had the most engagement in my classes.
Hmm.
Little thought experiments like how far away from the beach can you get in your cozies? And I mean, G-string or budgie smuggler. How far away from the actual sand on the beach can you get before you start getting funny looks from people? What do you think?
Do we to answer that question?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I'd say once you've entered the nearest suburban area, every beach always
So
has
if
a big like shop area, like a strand next
yeah,
to it. Once you have left that strand area into a
there's
habit,
usually
yeah,
there's usually some kind of street between the beach and that kind of first arcade strand
yeah,
shop area, right? So yeah, beyond that, and I
we
think most people agree, and they agree on it pretty quickly. Now, where does that knowledge come from? It's not written in law. Do
we
we
just all
actually
know
get told? But how?
we're getting panopticon.
Yeah, we get socially conditioned.
Get funny looks.
As in, we just know, but that knowledge has been constructed, socially constructed for us, right?
Yeah,
Now, these kind of
that's
questions,
that's actually why we both have our cameras off.
because we are one block away from the shops.
Yes. uh,
But that there are
I find myself too funny. Sorry.
plenty of topics like that that if you do engage with them, I
Mm.
mean, I'd love to do the experiment, like an actual art film documentary.
Oh, Kim's announcing
I
his new
literally,
project.
I literally take someone G-string, like really, really tight-fitting budgie smuggler, put them on a train, and then start like putting the camera on and go see like when are you starting to get really funny looks. I think that'd be really fascinating. What do you think?
I think it's an excellent
Would you
idea.
would you tune in to a show like that
I
and
would
see,
tune
for
in.
example, do it at different beaches, different countries?
That is basically the Eric Andre show. I would absolutely tune in.
But my point being is that like there are so many topics that everyone takes for granted, right? Like we take for granted that knowledge. Everyone's got that knowledge.
Mm.
Everyone agrees to pretty much within a street on that question. But we never sit down and actually ask the question because, well, I guess my question is why don't we ask those questions?
Mm. So, if we were to make a healthier environment in which to make, like in our new environment of spewing content out whenever we can, you need to just kind of swap out the content for visibility and make it content for engagement, and not in the social media marketing term, which means finding people to watch, but content to engage. Oh,
Yeah,
hang
no,
on,
I,
slogan. Hang
sorry,
on,
you go on.
got a slogan. Not content for engagement, but content to engage. Oh,
Yeah,
that's a fun little. You could put that on a Facebook
yeah.
image with like a white bold text. Someone needs to post that and say, "This is so deep." Sorry, you may continue.
In terms of the visibility thing, like I think it's more how do we know who we are?
Hmm.
Do we let others tell us who to be? And if so, who are these people? Who are these forces that we allow that power over us?
Hmm.
In terms of content, do you engage more with content where you feel that the creator is genuinely being themselves?
Absolutely, all the time.
But how often do you see that versus content that it feels like someone is curating as if they have
Hmm.
got a certain image they want to show of
Mm.
who they are.
But then also, aren't we always curating?
And I guess that is
That's the question. Are we ever actually truly ourselves?
so many people recognize it, but rather than making content about that,
Top 10 hottest dinosaurs in the Jurassic Park franchise. Number 1, Tyrannosaurus Rex.
or vlog about the latest fashion, or vlog about the latest tech gadgets,
Mm.
or vlog about the latest whatever.
Mm.
So I think a lot of what I'm seeing is that so much of the kind of positioning for visibility, for views, kind of feel like is playing a lot on FOMO.
Oh, it's not a kind of feel like it. That's exactly what it's doing. Don't just have an inkling. That's exactly how it works. It's a business
No, I
model.
mean like mean the actual content, as in like I said, vlogging about the latest fashion, i.e., you're missing out on this.
Yeah, it's so
You're not up to
ingrained.
scratch, or vlogging about the latest tech gadgets. Well, if you don't have these, then you're missing out.
Yeah, it's
Am
so
I right?
ingrained.
Am I wrong in observing that?
You're completely right. I mean, that's also just consumer culture as well.
And I think a lot of us kind of feel like we're a bit sick of that.
Yeah.
Well, what do you feel?
I'm feeling very sick of it. I think it's exhausting.
But rather than talking about that, what does a lot of the content do? It just keeps fueling it.
Constant space being filled with stuff.
So, I think, audience, what do you think? Would you rather have content that engages us, makes us have conversations about who we are? Would you like that?
Is the ideal world one full of slightly less but more engaging content, or more but less interesting content? That's the real question. Leave a comment below and give us the engagement so the algorithm can make us show up on the YouTube page and play in the background for people while they do their little activities. After our anti-content rant,
Totally what he said.
completely what I said. Are we signing off?
I think so.
I think so.
Did you have anything else?
Follow for the keep your eyes peeled for the next you didn't know exclusive video, top 10 hottest Jurassic Park dinosaurs. See you then.